Ruby Hart wiped down the counter at the small-town diner where she spent most of her days serving endless streams of coffee and homemade pie. Despite the hard work and long hours, she took pride in her job, knowing it allowed her to care for herself and her younger brother. Today, however, was special. After months of saving tips and skipping little indulgences, she was treating herself to a day she had long dreamed of: lunch at the exclusive Lakeside Golf Course Club restaurant. She had heard tales of its opulence, the lavish meals, and the sweeping views over emerald fairways and glistening lakes. Clad in her carefully chosen thrift shop outfit, a simple floral dress and a pair of sensible flats, and carrying a plain tote bag, Ruby felt both excitement and nervousness bubbling within her. Stepping through the grand entrance, Ruby was immediately enveloped in a world of luxury: the soft glow of crystal chandeliers overhead, the gleam of polished wood floors, and the gentle hum of well-dressed patrons engaged in sophisticated chatter. She paused, momentarily stunned by the elegance and sensory overload of fine perfumes mingling with exquisite cuisine. Approaching the reception, Ruby hesitated, unsure of what to do. Her voice shook slightly as she asked about her reservation, stumbling over the pronunciation of certain dishes and referring to the staff's offering of a signature cocktail as a fancy juice. Nearby patrons cast disapproving glances her way, their perfectly manicured expressions displaying disdain. Before she could even recover, Claudette, the impeccably dressed manager, approached. With an icy smile, Claudette didn't hide her scorn as she belittled Ruby's appearance and manners, making sure her voice carried throughout the room. Ruby's cheeks burned with embarrassment, feeling as if the walls were closing in on her. With a sharp gesture, Claudette dismissed Ruby, instructing her to leave immediately. As Ruby turned and trudged towards the exit, her footsteps seemed to echo unnaturally loudly in the grand hall, each step a painful drumbeat driving home her humiliation. The snide remarks from Claudette, the manager, seemed to linger in the air, heavy and clinging to Ruby's every breath. Some patrons had smirked, their sneers punctuating the air like exclamation points of judgment. Others had whispered to their companions, their sideways glances sharp as knives. A few patrons, shifting uncomfortably in their seats, turned their eyes elsewhere, unwilling to meet Ruby's gaze or acknowledge the treatment she was enduring. Ruby's embarrassment was a living thing, coiled tightly around her chest as she stumbled outside. The cool air was a biting contrast to the warmth inside, and it stung at her eyes, though she couldn't be sure if it was from the cold or the tears threatening to spill over. She hugged her tote bag close, feeling the harsh texture under her fingertips as a grounding force. She walked until she found a bench in the nearby park, a quiet little pocket edged with trees that rustled gently in the autumn breeze. The bench was damp from a morning drizzle, but Ruby didn't mind. She sat down heavily, letting the world around her blur for a moment. She looked up to the sky, the gray clouds rolling by indifferently, and took a deep breath, trying to steady the whirlpool of emotions inside her. Despite everything, the unfairness and the pain felt so personal. How long had she waited for this day? To feel like she belonged, even if just for a moment, in a place she had so long admired. Her mind drifted back to everything she'd gone through to afford this small slice of luxury. Her memories carried her back a few months, to the raw beginning of her journey. Ruby had been left with the responsibility for her younger brother, Logan, after their parents' unexpected passing, a relentless storm of a situation that had left her to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. She'd worked extra shifts at the diner, often waking before dawn and returning home well past dark, her legs aching, but heart determined. Logan, always with a wide, encouraging smile, was her anchor, a reminder of why she persevered. She remembered the little joys she had willingly put aside, the occasional movie nights or new book she loved, all because she had her sights set on making this one special day happen. This solitary meal was meant to be a quiet celebration of a full year navigating their new reality, of surviving, of daring to hope for small dreams amidst life's bigger battles. Ruby replayed those vivid mornings where she passed the golf course on the bus, her gaze lingering on the sprawling landscape and elegant clubhouse perched like a crown atop the hill. She'd often imagined herself a part of it, even if just as a tiny blip, invisible and unnoticed among the wealthy patrons. The thought had been enough to spark joy. Her mind lingered on the memory of a particularly grueling Sunday shift at the diner, one where a regular customer, Brian, had overheard Ruby mentioning the luxurious golf course and had shared his own experience of a charity event held there. He had spoken about the taste of their renowned lakeside Caesar salad with such profound indulgence, his words painted in tastes and textures rather than simply sound. Ruby had imagined herself seated there, savoring the layers of beauty both on her plate and around her, an indulgence she had wanted to gift herself for striving so hard. Yet now here she was, on a damp bench, holding nothing but a deflated dream and the cold mockery of others' laughter. The experience, which she imagined would be a reaffirmation of her hard work, was instead a brutal reminder of barriers people like her faced in worlds so starkly different from their own. In between the undulating waves of shame and disillusionment, a spark of defiance burned within Ruby. It urged her to stand up, dust off the remnants of embarrassment, and reclaim the strength she knew lay within. She'd been dealt worse cards, hadn't she? This meal, this single experience, as important as it was, couldn't tear apart everything she stands on and had rebuilt from the ground up. Sitting among the whispers of falling leaves, Ruby allowed herself those last moments of introspection, her heartbeat steadying finally, the warmth of resolve seeping back into her chest. With Logan as her constant source of strength, she realized her worth was not measured by the clothes she wore or the places she was, or wasn't, welcomed into. She took a slow, deep breath, exhaled the weight of that afternoon, letting fresh resolve fill the expanding space. She picked herself up, smoothing her dress and securing her bag over her shoulder. She began the walk back towards the town, thoughts now clearer, each step fortified with newfound determination. Today may have been a setback, but she wouldn't let it have the final say. In the center of town, the sights and sounds of people moving in their normal routines wrapped around her like a familiar song. It was here, amongst her people, her community, that she drew true belonging and life's enriching comfort. Her heart subtly lifted, fostering a sense of patience that she would harbor as a seed for another day's dreams. As Ruby journeyed back to her modest slice of life, she knew she was engaging more than a solitary struggle, fueling her next steps with the recognition of her own journey and inherent worth that no clubhouse, grand or mundane, could diminish. After gathering herself on that park bench, Ruby rose, taking one last look around the serene space that had offered her a moment of clarity amidst her turmoil. She knew she could not let the humiliation she felt define her day, and she certainly wouldn't carry it with her forever. As she set out towards the path that led out to the town once more, she felt a renewed sense of purpose, propelled as much by the need to live for herself as by the reminder of everyone depending on her. Passing the clubhouse again on her way back, Ruby's eyes were drawn to the employees' entrance at the side of the building, the door slightly ajar with a lithe line of yellowish light tracing its edges, throwing sharp relief onto the immaculate facade. As she got closer, her footsteps slowed, not out of hesitation or reluctance, but because something caught her attention. Within the confined space past that door, she overheard the low murmur of a conversation drifting over the ambient hum of the kitchen. The conversation was between two staff members, one grumbling about the recent rise in complaints they'd received about the dishes being served. "They keep saying the croutons are stale, like we haven't got enough on our plate, huh?" said a young man's voice, threaded with weariness. "Did I tell you they've changed suppliers again, to cut costs?" "I found weevils in the flour container last week," replied another voice, exasperated and impatient. Ruby's heart skipped at the mention of pests. Her curiosity piqued, her stride halted completely, as she strained to catch more of what they were saying. Another topic of note shifted in their discussion about something far more pressing, with one of the voices casually bringing up how the recent inspections hadn't been as thorough and were instead seen as mere formalities. Ruby's eyes widened. She couldn't shake the alarm bells ringing in her mind, painted as a cautionary tale, wrapped up in their idle conversations. Being in food service herself, she knew the significance of maintaining strict health and safety standards. The revelation spurred an internal conflict within Ruby, torn between leaving behind that awful place and doing what she inherently knew was right. It took just one more glance, hearing mumbled gripes about expired certifications, things that could potentially harm innocent patrons, as Ruby finally resolved to take action. Not everything was perfect in her life, but she knew right from wrong, knew when to stand her ground and speak up. Seated on a bench at the nearby bus stop now, Ruby pulled out her phone with determination, letting her fingers punch the numbers and letters with the subtle intensity of someone who knew, deep down, that small actions rolled like pebbles, able to set into motion larger waves. She drafted an anonymous email in clear, concise language alerting the city's health department to potential violations at the golf course club. As she finally sent it off, Ruby leaned back, exhaling a breath, a silent wish that this discreet act of whistleblowing would ultimately make a difference. As she rose from the bench to continue her journey home, Ruby felt a quiet satisfaction. Plodding forward, the weight she felt earlier began slowly dissipating, giving way to a sensation of cautious pride. While the golf course experience may have been tainted and her day sullied, she still managed to transform it into something positive, committing a small act of defiance against a world of glistening veneers. As the day faded, with crimson twilight chasing away the sinking sun, Ruby made it back to her neighborhood. The familiar surroundings embraced her like a warm blanket after an exhausting day, Logan tinkering in the shared garden, a group of neighbors chatting amicably while sharing laughter, and the homely smell of dinner cooking, a fragrant bouquet that told tales of love and life. Logan spotted her walking up the street and ran to greet her, his youthful exuberance cutting through any remnants of her earlier frustrations. "Hey, sis. I was waiting for you. Did you have fun?" he asked, his eyes wide with genuine curiosity and blind trust. Ruby offered a warm smile, enveloping him in a soft hug. Whatever had happened earlier, she realized it didn't need to tarnish their evening together. There was still time to enjoy each other's company and create new, valuable memories untainted by classist expectation. "Yeah," Ruby replied, her voice gentle but firm, grounding herself in the truth. "I made sure to do something important today, something that matters." She led Logan toward their apartment, his enthusiasm mingling with the bustle of their evening routine. The small space seemed to vibrate with life, the clinking of cutlery, warmth from the living room lamp, and the gentle lilt of a radio station playing quietly from the corner. Standing together, before the table they had set with modest but joyful intent, Ruby felt she was indeed doing right by both herself and her family. As night fell, Ruby sat with her thoughts once more, this time reflecting on her quiet strength, the decision to face her fears and injustices head-on, no matter the scale. Through her small act of courage, Ruby attempted to leave the world a little better than she found it, stabilizing the belief in herself and the choices she made. The darkness outside enveloped the day, leaving Ruby with the stoic knowledge that growth and change were underway, a process born of pride, shame, defiance, and grace that might yet lead toward a brighter tomorrow. Her resilience remained untarnished, her humble heart harboring the seeds for real, impactful action with the future promising unfurling hope, not just for her, but for the community around her as well. Days after that unsettling visit to the Lakeside Golf Course Club, Ruby continued with her daily life, her resolve steadfast, driven by the routine of her work and the warmth of her small family. She rattled around the diner with renewed purpose, her days filled with the comforting rhythms of bustling customers, endless coffee refills, and the lifeline of laughter shared with her regular patrons. One brisk morning, as she reached the diner, Ruby's city landscape was painted with unexpected commotion. Heads turned as they noticed a local news van parked conspicuously outside the town hall. An air of anticipation lingered, suggesting something significant had stirred their little community awake. Intrigued, Ruby found herself gravitating towards a small crowd that had gathered, each person whispering snippets that sparked deeper curiosity. Overheard tidbits woven through the crowd painted the tale of the news, an investigative report unveiling major food safety violations at the prestigious Lakeside Golf Course Club. The news anchor's polished tone delivered the information with gravity, iterating point after point of negligent practices, expired certifications, improper food storage, pests, and an indiscriminate disregard for standards that could endanger patrons' health. Listening attentively, Ruby's heart raced as the realization hit her. this was the result of her anonymous email. Her small act, an unassuming pebble in a wide-reaching pond, had rippled into a wave that prompted public scrutiny and action. The story captivated the town, and the buzz spilled into every crevice of their daily interactions. Online, local forums were lit with discussions about elite places failing the community's trust, and people exchanged stories of exclusion and disdain they had faced in similar places. Influencers and online personalities picked up the story, its appeal rooted in the universal desire for fairness and accountability, their passion lending voices to the chorus demanding change. The golf club's management, sailing in troubled waters, tried swift damage control. Their official statement was laced with urgency, assuring patrons that immediate steps would be taken to rectify the failings. However, this did little to quell the rising tide of dissatisfaction spiraling through the town, people's trust severely compromised. Local journalists dug deeper, driven by the newfound momentum of public interest. Authorities declared they were scrutinizing other exclusive locations across the city, propelling a movement that made businesses rethink the latitude they allowed themselves above scrutiny. There was no longer an unquestioned margin when it came to public safety and the law. The golf club faced immediate repercussions, fines imposed, a temporary shutdown mandated until they could demonstrate sweeping remediation efforts, and a suspension handed down to Claudette, the manager implicated in creating a toxic customer environment, ensuring compliance would now reflect non-discrimination. Within this shifting landscape, Ruby felt a quiet swelling of pride, a tangible reassurance that each individual held the power to institute change, no matter how seemingly small. Her anonymous stand had triggered dialogue, encouraging other, simple, customers to step out and share their own experiences of inadequacy felt in rarefied spaces. News outlets began calling Ruby's act courageous, though they did not know her identity, and she was grateful for that anonymity. The heartfelt gratitude and encouragement she received from her community mattered almost fiercely to her, emphasizing the depth of impact she'd had. Her colleagues at the diner expressed admiration, supplying her with unexpected support. Back at the bus stop one day, she crossed paths with Brian, the diner regular whose tales of fancy salads had once enchanted her. He looked initially taken aback, but a broad smile quickly formed as he approached her with words of affirmation. "Ruby, can you believe it? A whole revelation at that fancy club. Whoever started this did right by all of us who never fit in their world." Ruby nodded, the warmth from the moment tugging at her lips, matching his smile with a gentler, secretive one. She felt rather than voiced the depth of her action's impact, enveloped in the unspoken understanding that passed between them. The wave of gratitude extended as others she encountered, customers, neighbors, and even strangers, offered her gestures of encouragement, small smiles, and affirming nods. The stories they shared of solidarity painted a picture of newfound hope and collective empowerment as their voices began to weave into one firm foundation built from countless experiences. Ruby saw it in the defiance etched in the lines of new, invigorated protesters, members of her community who once felt invisible emboldened to claim and rewrite their narrative with brave strokes. Together, they began challenging systemic discrepancies which had quietly silenced them for too long. Through it all, Ruby maintained her anonymity, choosing instead to bolster those around her from within her own life threads, driven by the knowledge she had ignited a spirit of awareness and the courage to believe in their right to equal treatment. Her voice, unseen, yet steadfast, within the greater whole, was still instrumental, rippling through the intertwining strands of society, piercing through artificial hierarchies and bringing a fairer, stronger world into view. As the days went by, Ruby embraced her newfound role, not as a crusader or a fighter, but as a force of quiet change, poised graciously amid the rising tide of progress. Her decision, grounded and steady, blossomed into movements that spread beyond herself, reshaping lives and perspectives as she continued to navigate bravery against a world that so often fell short in acknowledging equality and kindness. Ruby's gift to herself, to her family, and to her community was her resolve, a reclaimed flame of dignity that illuminated hope and inspired generous hearts to lift as one, building ladders toward a fairer, more inclusive tomorrow. Weeks passed since the lake golf course scandal broke out, and life began to settle into a new kind of normal, one imbued with a subtle yet undeniable sense of empowerment and change. Ruby resumed her days in the diner, buoyed by a quiet confidence, her actions having wrought tangible change within the community. The once felt weight of societal judgment was now replaced with a lightness that allowed her to carry herself a little taller, each step imbued with renewed humility and pride. One afternoon, clad in her familiar simple attire, she found herself back in the comforting warmth of the diner, the usual hum of life enveloping her like an old friend. Mr. Johnson, a sweet elderly regular, handed her the latest newspaper, grinning with an air of mischief. "Got some news for you, Missy," he said, tapping the front page where a headline caught her eye, a follow-up on the club's ongoing changes. The article outlined transformative steps the golf course had undertaken since the incident, a complete management overhaul, rigorous new health policies, and a heartfelt campaign to invite diverse sectors of the community to their future events. It seemed her pebble hadn't just created ripples but waves that forced real, lasting change. Feeling the optimism flowing through her veins like a gentle current, Ruby folded the paper with a sense of closure. Her anonymous stand was a redeemed chapter, an echo of courage that sparked sweeping improvements, proving that one person's voice, lacking status or prestige, could still cascade into significant reform. The unexpected presence of the mayor, walking through the diner's door, caught her by surprise, sending curious glances around the establishment as people whispered and pointed. A distinguished figure whose prominence carried the weight of the city's ear, he approached Ruby with a friendly warmth in his expressions that belied any suggestion of formality. "Ruby Hart," he began, extending his hand. "We owe much of what you accomplished here to your courage. Quiet and unsung though it may have been, your willingness to act has shown us the spirits that lift communities when people like yourself stand firm in the face of injustice." The mayor's words, laden with sincerity, amplified the impact of her actions. He handed her a letter of recognition from the city, a token of gratitude acknowledging her contribution to ethical accountability and progressive harmony. Ruby was touched, humbled by the acknowledgement that allowed her pride to swell gently in her chest, resonating alongside the steadfast love she felt for her family and neighbors. Outside the window, the streets bustled with the late afternoon crowd, the city breathing an energy that felt distinctly renewed. Weekends now saw activities and gatherings sparked by newfound ideals and a commitment to inclusivity. A group of young activists had started hosting open dialogues in the park, sharing stories and arriving at solutions as they challenged deep-seated notions that once kept their lives defined by barriers of exclusivity. Ruby had joined them once or twice, offering quiet support and gratitude, her thoughts resonating with the empowered notion of change they all sought to create. Across from the familiar silhouette of the golf course's landscape, now in a state of cooperative renaissance, Ruby paused one day, and letter in her hand, inviting her as a guest to one of the club's upcoming events under its new community outreach programs. She pondered over the offer, deliberating on whether to attend and accept their apology. With a moment's introspection, Ruby decided to acknowledge their sincerity, appreciating the possibility of positive engagement over past grievances, knowing all could still learn and grow together in small ways. The moment offered her dignity and relief, her heart veering toward forgiveness and the strength found not in resistance but mutual understanding. Back at the diner, the ebb and flow of life continued its melodic rhythm, soft smiles greeting Ruby as she fulfilled her duties, the warmth of companionship surrounding her always like a cocoon. Her friends and family rallied to enjoy hearty meals and laughter, moments with her brother Logan demonstrating to Ruby that legacy was born from love nurtured and preserved. One evening, as the lights softened under the embrace of dusk, Ruby found herself on her couch with a steaming cup of tea in one hand, her sister by her side. The room hummed with life, their shared laughter and vibrant memories colliding with a future gleaming in hope. In her solitude, Ruby reflected softly, sipping on her tea, the weight of what she'd accomplished remaining grounded in simplicity and purpose. Her heart unfurled myriad dreams shaped by her character and warmth, hoping to inspire others who dared to transcend stigma and defy disparity, choosing instead to pave paths grounded in unity. As the last note of the fading sun wove through her window net, weaving the day into twilight threads, Ruby lay her head back, a serene smile traced on her features. Anonymous or named, known or obscure, her legacy was quietly but indelibly inscribed in the lives she had touched. What began as a singular dream, an adventure to experience rarefied luxury, which morphed into bold action against injustice, had blossomed into sincere transformations that benefited not just herself, but the community she cherished. Ruby, modest server and awe-filled dreamer, had reshaped a piece of her world with unwavering courage. Though unadorned by prestige, the fire within her softly glowed, illuminating morals gracefully supported by belief that status is ephemeral, but the spirit of courageous love and empathy would resonate evermore like the sonorous hum of a kindly bell on destiny's drift.